Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, whenever you are. Hello, thank you for watching my videos. It's Mike. It's October 6th, 2009. Only a few more weeks to go, if predictions are correct. Something's afoot. There are stories appearing in the newspapers about the dollar and how we may be heading towards the demise of the dollar. Now this is quite unusual for the mainstream media to have a story like this. It's linked here, over on the side, whichever side, that side, from The Independent today, out of London. The demise of the dollar, and the subheading, in a graphic illustration of the New World Order, Arab states have launched secret moves with China, Russia, and France to stop using the US currency for oil trading. Now it's a very interesting little read. None of the sources are really mentioned by name, other than to say that certain sources have said, etc., etc. The plans which have been confirmed, etc., etc. May help to explain the sudden rise in gold prices, and so on. Now, what's happening? Partway through the article, the decline of American economic power linked to the current global recession was implicitly acknowledged by the World Bank President Robert Zoellick. One of the legacies of this crisis may be a recognition of changed economic power relations, he said in Istanbul. Now, why was Istanbul? Okay, the G7 had a meeting in Turkey over the weekend, and a number of back talk was going on. None of it reported officially, certainly none of it in the official communique from the G7. But there are plans afoot to change things in a dramatic fashion. Further, the story talks about how China is importing most of its oil from the Middle East and Russia, and goes on further to say if Iran, and of course I've also linked a story here, Iran recently announced that they will accept other currencies for their oil, and they are dumping all of their US dollar foreign reserves and switching it over to euros. Now, of course, the last person that tried to sell oil in euros was Saddam Hussein. Is it any wonder why there's this sudden rumbling about nuclear weapons and so forth in Iran? It's all made up, of course, but never mind. Now, the dollar's demise was mentioned also in the Telegraph. There were some opposing views as to the particular veracity of the story. Neil Ferguson, a Harvard University professor, published a number of books, etc., etc. He doesn't say that, he said that yesterday there wouldn't be a dollar collapse given the lack of proper alternatives. Yes. Unless, of course, the dollar does some rather bizarre things in the coming weeks. MarketWatch even covered the story. Growing speculation over the potential end to dollar-based trading in the oil market may be part of the reason gold prices have rallied beyond $1,020 an ounce, to stand at its highest level in 18 months. We won't go into great detail on that one. Now, what's going to happen over the next few weeks? Okay, a story from the Telegraph, reported by Ambrose Evans Pritchard. Banks brace for Latvia's collapse. There are some secret talks going on with Swedish banks. Sweden was the primary lender to Latvia, and now that Latvia is going through its little problems, shall we say, it is looking quite likely that there will be more problem for Swedish banks coming soon. Now, one of the things he mentions in here, which is quite important, Latvia's economy contracted by 18.2% in the 12 months to June, trumped only by Lithuania at 20.4%. Of course, Ireland is coming close, but somewhere around about 10 or 11%. However, big number right in the middle of this, youth unemployment in Latvia is already 31%. Now, of course, this is the official numbers. Unofficially, well, it's going to be around 50%, isn't it? That's an awful lot of disgruntled young people running about. I expect to see some interesting things happening in Latvia. Now, what happened over the weekend? Ireland voted on the Lisbon Treaty. Now, what is the Lisbon Treaty? Effectively, this is a new version of the European Constitution. There were two countries that were holding it up. One was Ireland, and the other was the Czech Republic. There was also a hold-up in Poland, but they basically said if Ireland voted yes, they would also ratify. So at the moment, the Czech Republic is holding up the Lisbon Treaty. I'm sure there are some backroom dealings going on, trying to by the vote. Now the Irish vote, 60% of the Irish population that voted chose yes. Now one of the things that I've heard is that the actual voting papers were tucked in with all of the other information about what the vote was all about in the mailing that went out to everyone. And a lot of people just threw it out and didn't realize that it was actually the voting paper. Now, of course, you could go vote with some identification, but you need to know where to vote, etc. So we don't quite know what the turnout was like, what the official turnout was like, but anyway, Ireland has voted yes to the Lisbon Treaty, which will hopefully improve Ireland's performance slightly economically. Of course, that was the big thing that was what was really pushing it, was that the Irish economy would be improved by voting yes, because of course all the Irish bonds and everything are priced in euros, and if they show that they are strongly supported for EU, the cost of insuring against a default on the Irish bond would decline, and correspondingly the cost of the bond itself would drop. Now, one of the things that Irish economy mentioned here in an article from Ambrose Evans Pritchard, contracted by 11.6% in the 12 months to June. Technically, Ireland is in a depression. If you go by the standard definition of a decline of more than 10% is a trigger for depression. Nominal GDP shrank by nearly 13%. And some other interesting little pieces in here. One thing I will try to link is a video from Ryanair's boss, Michael O'Leary, basically saying they wants the EU to vote to be yes so that he can go gobble up Aer Lingus. Anyway. Now, a lot of people are complaining, and it's mentioned in the story, that Ireland isn't as bad as some of the other countries out there. Well, Iceland's economy only contracted by 6.5%, less than Germany, and is already turning the corner. Exports are soaring, etc., etc. And in Iceland, unemployment actually fell in August, because what Iceland has done is basically messed about with their currency, devalued their currency with regards against other currencies, and so that their exports are cheaper, which is pumping up their internal manufacturing and job creation. Now, why am I mentioning the Lisbon Treaty? Now, I mentioned this back very nearly 6 months ago to the day. Tony Blair wants to be the EU president. Of course, he's not publicly saying this. Article from The Guardian over the weekend. Irish vote sends Tony Blair racing to EU presidency. So this is what it's all about. So the Lisbon Treaty is being held up by the Czech Republic. More than likely, there's some, as I said, backroom dealings going on to get them to agree to all of this. Why is this all coming to a head now? There are funny things going on. There's going to be some kind of event near the end of the month. Basically, something the web bots are predicting in their short-term forecast that something is going to happen around the last week of October. Something financial, and it will cause, quote, economic collapse. So everything seems to be pointing towards the end of October. Now, what's going to trigger it? There's all kinds of rumors that there's funny things going on in the currency markets. I'm going to link a video here that someone has bought up 90% of the tin on the London Mercantile Exchange. So they bought 90% of the tin that's actually available for sale right now. That's not good. Somebody knows something. Goldman Sachs and CIT are currently in talks to renegotiate the loan that Goldman Sachs gave CIT. Now, CIT, as I mentioned before, is this refactoring company. It looks likely that they will go bankrupt before the end of the month if they can't renegotiate some of the bondholders with some of the bondholders. So CIT might go. There's funny things happening with some of the banks. So the banks that, I've heard a rumor that the banks that have acquired other smaller banks, so the bank failures we've been seeing recently, when depositors go to get some money out of their bank that has been gobbled up, the new bank holder basically says, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have record of you at the moment. Come back in a couple of days, I'm sure we'll have sorted it out by then. In the meantime, their deposits are then ferreted off somewhere to gain interest to make buying this bank actually feasible. Yeah, they do play tricks like that. So, end of the month is looking interesting. The last week of October, I will be in England. Fortunately for me, my company is obligated to get me back here to Canada so that I can continue working on this contract we have. But yeah, it should be an interesting month. If you're of the sensible mind, you may plan to have a little bit of extra food near the end of the month, just in case something unusual happens. Now, I would suggest before the last week of October, you get a little bit extra food in, maybe some tins of stuff, perhaps, just in case. I mean, the worst that will happen is nothing will happen, and you'll have some extra food in the house. So what? You'll eat it. Big deal. Okay. Peace, love, understanding. Think about things. Something's coming, folks. Bye.